Good morning, everyone. We apologize for the audio glitch. Our partner seems to be having an issue with our audio. So please, we sincerely apologize and request you give us some minutes for our IT team to resolve the issue. Thank you very much.
And video. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're clear. Good morning, Chisa.
Okay, you can hear me now. Oh, good. Thank you. Actually thought everybody could hear me the last time. Thank you. Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Chisa Oba. I'm a partner and head of the Shipping Dispute Resolution and Shipping Group of Dentons ACAS-Law. On behalf of the firm, it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar titled Navigating Nigeria's Maritime Compliance Landscape, Balancing Local Requirements and Global Competitiveness. We are delighted to have such a large turnout today. Thank you for taking the time to be with us for this important discussion. As a leading law firm in shipping, maritime, and oil and gas, among other areas, Dentons ACAS-Law has extensive experience in advising clients in Nigeria's maritime and oil and gas industries. Today's webinar reflects our commitment to fostering meaningful dialogue on issues affecting the industries. Some time ago, I participated in a webinar where I discussed the laws governing the maritime industry and the regulators in charge of the industry. By the time I was done, one of the other participants remarked that the industry sounded overregulated and how cumbersome it must be for the operators to keep up. Well, considering that Nigeria's maritime industry is the lifeblood of our oil and gas industry, and that for decades, Nigeria's maritime industry has been a critical gateway for West Africa's trade, the level of regulation is understandable. Moreover, the maritime industry is vast with many different sectors for which individual laws are tailored. So it is understandable. And all the laws, especially since all the laws, the underlying objective of all the laws is for efficient running and growth and sustainability of the industry for the good of all of us. Nonetheless, we recognize that every regulatory oversight and compliance obligation has the potential to affect operations, maybe even investor confidence if the effect is negative. The main challenge facing stakeholders in the industry is therefore not necessarily the number of regulations, but achieving an efficient compliance framework while remaining competitive in an increasingly global marketplace. Some of the compliance challenges often reported by stakeholders in the industry include delayed approvals stroke processes, overlapping regulatory functions, and uncertainty in regulatory processes. These challenges are not merely compliance issues. They are operational and commercial risks that affect business plans, competitiveness, and investments. Today's webinar addresses these issues directly by examining the key compliance challenges facing Nigeria's maritime industry, the practical implication for operators, and explores viable practical solutions to promote more efficient compliance procedures. To address these issues today, I am delighted, particularly delighted that we have with us esteemed speakers who are eminent personalities with vast experience in the industry. Our speakers will be looking at these issues from different viewpoints. We have a representative of the regulators. We have from the oil and gas industry. We have cabotage or coastal traders, and we have the international carriers also here, each to present their viewpoint on this issue. I will wait, I will allow our moderator, my colleague, Nsobon Okon, will introduce the speakers more in due course. So thank you again for joining us as I hand over now to my colleague Nsobon, who will be moderating the rest of the event. Thank you very much. And I hope we all get something from this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Uba. You have provided a very excellent foundation for our panel discussion by reminding us that effective compliance is no longer simply about meeting regulatory requirements. It is a business imperative that influences operational efficiency, investor confidence, and global competitiveness. But before we proceed, we would like you, our audience, to take 2 minutes of your time to answer 2 polls that we have prepared. The first poll should be showing on your screen right now. Okay, so we want to get our audience and give our panelists a sense of the stakeholders that are in the room. And this will allow us to also tailor our discussions to your interest. Which category best describes your organization? That's our first poll. Please kindly cast your vote and let us know which of these best describes your organization. Thank you. All right. The results of the poll show that most of our audience, about 46%, are from legal and consulting firms. Thank you very much for participating. Please, can we move on to the second poll? All right. Which maritime compliance issue presents the greatest challenge to your organization? Please, let's engage on the poll. Oh, wow. This is interesting. Environmental and emerging compliance obligations. Okay. 24% of our audience picked cabotage, Nordic, or other local content compliance. Oh, there seems to be a close tie between the first and the last option. So you have environmental and emerging compliance obligations and cabotage, Nordic, and other local content compliance issues as those that pose the greatest compliance to our audience. Thank you very much for participating. All right. Today, we have an exceptional lineup of speakers, and we already heard from our partner, Mrs. Uba, who have deep expertise from across the global regulatory and compliance dimensions of Nigeria's maritime and offshore energy sectors. And we are excited about the various perspectives they will contribute to today's conversation. But before we head into the panel session, a few housekeeping rules. Firstly, I would like our audience to know that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available to all registered participants within 48 hours. Secondly, all participants are currently muted. Please keep your cameras and microphones off throughout the session. And as we go along, we encourage you to use the chat function to ask questions. We have reserved 30 minutes at the end for Q&A, and we will do our best to address as many questions as possible. Finally, you can also submit your questions at any time during the presentation. Our team is monitoring the chat and will compile them for the Q&A session. Now, I will head straight to introduce our panelists who will do justice to the topic we have before us today. In no particular order, I would like to introduce Mr. Anthony Ani, our first panelist. Mr. Ani is a principal legal officer at the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA, and Nigeria's delegate to the 2025 session of the International Maritime Organization Subcommittee on the implementation of IMO instruments. With nearly 2 decades of experience spanning maritime law, policy, commerce, and regulation, Anthony has built a distinguished career across both public and private sectors. Since joining the NIMASA in 2018, Anthony has advised the agency's board and management on strategic legal, regulatory, and compliance matters, led the domestication of international maritime conventions, managed the agency's litigation portfolio, and played a key role in implementing Nigeria's anti-piracy framework under the Suppression of Piracy Act 2019. This has resulted in 13 pirate convictions. That's quite beautiful. He also served on the ministerial committee that developed the national guidelines for wreck removal in Nigerian waters, and currently serves on several technical committees focused on maritime safety, ship recycling, and legislative reform. Mr. Ani will bring a unique regulatory perspective to the discussion by sharing insights into the legal and policy considerations that shape Nigeria's maritime regulatory framework and the importance of fostering compliance and supporting the growth and the global competitiveness of the industry. Please join me welcome Mr. Anthony Ani. Next, we have Mr. Sonny Eja, who is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Petro Marine Nigeria Limited, a leading indigenous marine logistics, offshore support, and subsea engineering company, providing specialized services to Nigeria's oil and gas industry. With over 2 years of progressive leadership experience, he has built an outstanding career spanning marine logistics, business development, supply chain management, project management, financial management, policy management, and strategic leadership. In May 2024, he was sworn in as the president of the Ship Owners Association of Nigeria, SOAN, where he leads the association's effort to advance the interests of indigenous ship owners and promote sustainable growth and global competitiveness of Nigeria's maritime industry. Under his leadership, Petro Marine Nigeria Limited has continued to expand its position as a trusted provider of marine logistics, offshore support, and engineering solutions. Now, Mr. Eja holds a degree in communications and an MBA from Rochefort Business School, Switzerland. He has also completed executive education programs at Stanford Graduate School of Business and Harvard Business School and Cage Business School in collaboration with the Future School. He is a member of the Institute of Directors, Nigeria. Today, Mr. Eja will be drawing on his experience at Petro Marine Nigeria Limited, as well as his broader industry role as president of the Nigerian Ship Owners Association, and his experience as a sought-after speaker at leading industry conferences and forums to share practical insights into the realities of maritime compliance and the measures needed to strengthen the competitiveness of indigenous shipping lines from the coastal trade perspective. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Eja to the panel. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Eja. Thank you very much. Our next panelist is Mr. Adekunle Kehinde. He's the head of operations at Clarion Shipping West Africa Limited, where it oversees operational strategy, shipping logistics, supply chain coordination, and business development across the company's regional and international shipping network. He holds a bachelor degree in economics from Lagos State University, LASU, and is a seasoned maritime and shipping professional with over a decade of hands-on experience in port operations, freight forwarding, vessel management, customs clearance, multimodal transportation, and international trade facilitation. Throughout his career, Adekunle has played a pivotal role in developing efficient logistics solutions, strengthening maritime connectivity, and advancing intra-African trade. His expertise spans end-to-end supply chain management, operational excellence, trade compliance, and strategic partnerships with global shipping lines, port authorities, and logistics stakeholders. Today, Mr. Kehinde will share practical insights on how indigenous shipping operations navigate Nigeria's maritime compliance requirements while maintaining operational efficiency and competitiveness from the international carrier's perspective. Joining us as well is Mr. Daniel Shashibong. He is an accomplished legal professional with over 20 years of experience in legal advisory and corporate practice. He currently serves as General Counsel at Oriental Energy Resources Limited, an indigenous Nigerian oil and gas exploration and production company. With over 2 decades of experience, he has developed extensive expertise in the energy sector, advising on complex legal, commercial, and operational matters across Nigeria and the Gulf of Guinea. His practice has focused on high-value oil and gas transactions, including asset farm-ins, production sharing contracts, joint venture agreements, floating production storage and uploading agreements, and other specialized upstream operational contracts. Today, Mr. Daniel Shashegbon will provide the perspective of an upstream oil and gas operator on the commercial realities of maritime compliance. Drawing on his experience advising a leading indigenous energy company, he will discuss how maritime regulatory requirements influence project planning, commercial decision-making, contractual arrangement, and why regulatory clarity and certainty are essential to the efficient delivery of offshore projects. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Daniel Shashegbon. Finally, it is also my pleasure to introduce Mr. Nagozie Azi, a managing associate and member of the Shipping and Dispute Resolution Practice at Dentons ACAS-Law. Nagozie has extensive experience advising and representing stakeholders across the full spectrum of maritime law, commercial litigation, and arbitration. With his deep expertise and understanding of Nigeria's maritime industry, as well as dispute resolution landscape, he provides proactive, practical, strategic, and commercially focused legal advice and representation before Nigerian courts, as well as in domestic and international arbitrations. Over his career, Mr. Azi has advised and represented a portfolio of clients, including ship owners, P&I clubs, terminal operators, charterers, and cargo interests, shippers, commodity traders, financial institutions, oil and gas companies in high-value complex transactions and disputes. He has been consistently ranked by the Legal 500 EMEA guide in shipping and transport for 5 consecutive years. This is between 2022 and 2025, such an outstanding record. Now, drawing on his extensive advisory and dispute resolution experience, Mr. Azi will provide practical legal insights into navigating Nigeria's maritime regulatory framework and discuss how businesses can effectively manage compliance risk while remaining commercially competitive. Please join me welcome all our panelists with a virtual applause. You can engage with the chat function. Thank you so much. Now that brings us to our panel discussion. But before we begin, I would like to extend a warm welcome to those who may have joined us a little later. You've joined us just as we are about to begin the main discussion, and we encourage you to stay engaged throughout the session. With that, we'll get the conversation going. Today's discussion focuses on the most important issues facing Nigeria's maritime industry. I can see a hand raised. Please, you can use the chat function and we will, our team is on standby to attend to all of your questions. Thank you. All right. As I was saying, today's discussion focuses on one of the most important issues facing Nigerian maritime industry, which is how to navigate an increasingly complex regulatory environment while remaining competitive and commercially sustainable. While the objectives of Nigeria's maritime regulatory framework are well established, operators continue to face practical challenges in navigating multiple regulatory requirements, managing compliance obligations, and maintaining commercial competitiveness. Now, I will begin with you, Mr. Eja. Drawing on your experience as the managing director of Petromarine Limited and your broader perspective as president of Ship Owners Association of Nigeria, so on, what do you consider to be the most significant regulatory and compliance challenges confronting businesses operating in Nigeria's maritime sector today?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. And I'd like to say very good morning to everybody that has taken the time out to join this webinar session. Particular thanks to the organizers and conveners of this session. At the time where we need to have this sort of topical discussions, this is a very welcome development. And thank you, Mr. Moderator. But I thought that I had 2 years of experience. I have over 2 decades of experience. So I don't know if it was 2 years or 2 decades that I had. Anyway, I just thought to get that out of the way. Yes, for us in the maritime industry, the industry operates within one of the most regulated sectors of the economy. Of course, it's often joked that, I mean, this is the oil spinner of the Nigerian economy because, as a matter of fact, 95% of our revenue or 90% of our revenue comes from oil and gas, all right? So, and it's one of the regulated industries, and it's rightly so. Shipping, as one of the subsects of that industry, it's a global business, and we all know that 95% of global trade, happens through the sea, all right? And whilst this is a global business, it has to be carried out in a very safe manner. Of course, all the protections in place, environmental protections, security, operational standards, we can't compromise those standards. And so therefore, regulation itself is not the challenge. The real issue, often what I say to people, is ensuring that regulation promotes both compliance and competitiveness. And so I wear two caps, as it were, right now. As MDC of Petromarine and president of the Ship Owners Association of Nigeria. And of course, we've had interactions with both my members, the industry, the stakeholders, and of course, during these conversations, of course, certain challenges come to bear, all right? I'll start with the first one, which has to do with regulatory overlap, all right? So you have a situation where you have multiple government agencies often exercising oversight functions on the same issue. Similar aspects of the issues, and I'm sure that a lot of participants in this program today can attest to that. You have this government agency coming with this issue, coming with this regulation, coming with this item on the agenda, and then the other government agency as well also is handling the same. So you have those duplicated functions as they were. Of course, multiple documentations required, just for you to execute your business operations and all that. And these things come at a cost. It's not free. If they were free, then I probably would say, okay, look, we can afford to cope with them. But of course, the challenge would be also that productive man hours are being wasted and all that. So at the end of the day, what we've often advocated, and in my discussions with all the stakeholders, regulators in the industry, whether it's NIMASA or MPA or name them, NTDMB, I've always advocated for greater coordination amongst these regulators and all that. And I know one of the forums where we had one of the conferences, I had raised this issue to say, look, is it possible for all these agencies to come together and all that and see how we can harmonize all these functions, as it were. The other challenge has to do with how to predict the regulatory process, all right? So it's where you're not able to predict these processes, it's a huge challenge. Of course, businesses and contracts where I function, right, in that industry, in that space, is based on long-term projections, all right? Of course, if you want to invest in an assets acquisition, of course, there has to be a 5-year contract waiting for you and all that, or 4 years firm contract waiting for you. So at the end of the day now, if we are not able to predict the outcomes in terms of regulation in Nigeria, it affects significantly those investments and all that. And of course, if I'm looking forward to partner with an investor, some investors are looking for certain guiding licenses, timelines, and all that. Of course, there's the issue of approvals, there's the issue of regulatory expectations, of course, and where these processes are not predictable, it becomes very difficult to plan. And of course, cost would increase as well also. The other challenge that I see also in the industry is the issue of cost of compliance, right? Okay, as indigenous ship owners, as Nigerian ship owners, in my association, we are very much committed to complying with statutory requirements. Of course, you know that there's a penalty also to pay if you fail to comply. Of course, I know that even stepping aside from shipping now or the maritime industry, even in terms of NRS, former FIRS now, of course, there's the issue of compliance. So we pride ourselves and my members in ensuring that we comply to these statutory requirements. But then there is a cost implication also at various levels. Of course, there's the issue of certifications, there's inspections. Of course, approvals are there to be gotten for certain aspects of your operations. And of course, if you have an inspection and then you have an inspector that you have to fly from Lagos to Port Harcourt or from where, some inspections are even carried out outside the country. So we are absorbing this cost, hotel accommodation, flights, feeding, all those works and all that are put together. So it increases our cost, as it were, and it becomes very significant, right? So if we are competing and we are doing business with the IOCs, and of course the foreign operators in Nigeria and local Nigerian companies here as well also, those costs, are very, very much things that we are not able to harmonize most times. Finally, on this segment, right, is of course, the issue of international best practice as well also. I know that as a country, we have made, commendable progress in implementing some of the international maritime conventions. Of course, very recently, we were voted into the category C of IMO and all that. But then there still remains an opportunity for us to continually review our local regulations, as it were, to ensure that as we are playing in this industry to facilitate global trade, of course, also encouraging investment and strengthening, indigenous capacity while we remain fully aligned with global standards. Overall, I believe, and I've always sounded very positive, that compliance and competitiveness should not be viewed as opposing factors. We need to work closely and collaborate between industries and regulators. There has to be that handshake between the industry and the regulators. And in my discussions at all times, I know that some of my members or some of my colleagues in the industry have often said to me that, oh, you have not been very bullish in having to address the regulators and all that. I said, no. It's not a combative affair. It has to be a handshake. We have to. So thank you very much. I'll stop here for now.
Mr. Eja, thank you very much for those insightful remarks. You have identified overlapping regulatory functions and lack of predictability in regulatory processes, as well as the cost of compliance as some of those challenges that indigenous shipping companies face in the maritime industry. And you've also raised the issue of or the need to align our local laws with international best practice. One key takeaway from your contribution is that compliance has real commercial consequences for operators, and it affects efficiency and ultimately competitiveness. But let me now turn to Mr. Shashebong. He's the General Counsel of Oriental Energy Resources Limited. And I would want to ask, and as we know, offshore projects often involve significant financial commitment, complex logistics, and strict operational timelines. Now, from your experience, how do maritime compliance requirements influence commercial decision-making and project execution within the oil and gas sector? I'll give you 5 minutes to share your thoughts on this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everybody for having me on. It's always difficult to follow Sonny Eja, as he knows so much in this sector. But I'll try and put in my own 2 cents worth. The reality is that Sonny has said overlapping regulation in the marine sector is something that is not just within the marine sector. In oil and gas, we have many levels of regulation. We are potentially, and I say this advisedly with regulators on the screen, we are possibly over-regulated as well, potentially even more than the marine sector. So we are to a certain extent used to it, and where we have a certain amount of regulators in the within the system, which affect the commerciality of some of these decisions, and especially, as you said, some of these larger projects. But if I can try and just hit on a few points leading out of that. One of them is the discussion where the oil and gas and marine industry really meet. At a policy level, it is to a certain extent the interaction between the Nigerian content provisions within the oil and gas industry and its laws, and then the Cabotage Act and various other marine functions that work and affect the marine industry within Nigeria. To a certain extent, that balance needs to be got right. We need successful Nigerian ship owners to be able to handle successful Nigerian offshore projects. And noting, just as Sonny had mentioned, 90% of our production, of our GDP, or our economy is based on oil and gas, and a lot more of it is taking place in deep water and shallow water, which means that the marine industry is becoming more and more important, that we don't make the same mistakes that we made onshore. And in offshore an environment, we have right regulations, we have the right balance of environmental awareness and safe operation and production. And for us in oil and gas, safety is our number one, number two, number three aim. It is the only thing that allows us to operate. Any safety issue is essentially a game changer or company ender for an oil and gas company. So we take it extremely seriously. And you will find out that in most situations, the most direct employees are safety employees for oil and gas. Specifically in terms of Nigerian offshore projects, the proliferation of FSOs and FPSOs is something that's quite opposite at the moment. A few years ago, Nigeria frowned on having too many FSOs and FPSOs, but we have realized that that is the quickest way for us to reach our production targets. But that brings into consideration a lot of things which have been mentioned: TOVALOP, marine, ensuring that the FSOs and FPSOs that dot our coast are navigable and that they are safe and secure. So that's something that needs great interaction between both. One other point I would also mention is that the involvement of the Navy, not only, I know we have NAMASA on, but we also have the Navy because of the more historic security issues around Nigerian offshore, and how they interact with commercial operators is something that we need to keep an eye on. NAMASA, to be fair, are commercially aware. The Navy are not always commercially aware of the effects of the decisions they take on maritime, and also the requirement for naval ratings offshore and on every vessel is something that the industry will have to look at the right point. Delays and the shutdowns of strategic access, I think, have been dealt with before and will be dealt with again. One last point, and Sunny had mentioned this to a certain extent, but IOCs and indigenous operators. IOCs are the gold standard, and we understand why Nigerian maritime ship owners look at that. But there needs to be a greater understanding of how to work with indigenous offshore operators to see whether we can pool resources, whether the ship owners can acquire to be able to serve indigenous operators as well. And sometimes the use of vessels on one asset sitting around again for another week or two before they're deployed on another asset, where anchor handlers and security vessels are some things that everybody uses. So in relation to that, we would support some growth in terms of the acquisition capacity of Nigerian ship owners and their ability to work with indigenous operators. I think at that point my 5 minutes may be up, so I will pause.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shashibong, for those valuable insights and for sharing your perspective from an upstream oil and gas industry operator. But at this point, I will come back to you. I want to bring in Mr. Kane Dave from the head of operations at Clarion Shipping to weigh in on this issue of of compliance as it affects international carriers like Clarion Shipping. Mr. Kende, I want to ask, as the first fully indigenous container vessel or indigenous shipping line, you have first-hand experience navigating the realities of running a Nigerian-owned international shipping operation. My question is, what have been the key operational and regulatory challenges involved in building and sustaining such an operation? But before then, let me remind our audience that they can make use of the chat function, please, and send all your questions. Our team is compiling them, and we'll get to them shortly. Thank you.
Thank you for
Mr.
the
Kende,
question.
over to you. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. I think the first fully indigenous container vessel has been both rewarding and at the same time challenging. Why the opportunities are to strengthen the indigenous operations, continue to face a number of operational and regulatory orders. We try to, from where we came from, as the first indigenous company to see how we can maintain, the viability of doing business in Nigeria, where the enabling what we assist us to, to perform optimally and achieve our aim. From operational standpoint, access to available financing remains one of our biggest challenges. As a shipping company, we all know that it's capital intensive and it requires substantial investment to acquire container, terminal infrastructure, and technology. Most of the time, we struggle to secure long-term loan, which is currently what we are currently facing. And again, infrastructure constraint also affects our operation and efficiency. Then we talk of you can imagine in 2025 we received over 21 million TEUs containers because we are trying to ensure that we deliver all these containers on time. Overlapping agencies, like as rightly said by the co-panelists, has been one of the issues that we have been facing to ensure we take delivery like it's been done in the Western world. In the Western world, if your containers come to Nigeria, there are two folds. One, if your container are low risk, in 24 hours, in 1 day, your container is out of the terminal, except there's a special requirement for your container to be examined and inspected. That's why they send you the customer that have to be involved in inspection of your container. And this inspection are not being physical, but in Nigeria we have so many agencies almost doing the same time. On the regulatory side, why compliance is essential for safety and international credibility. Like mentioned earlier, overlapping regulatory requirements is one of the major things that's been stalling, the progress and the growth of indigenous shipping line like ours. Clarion shipping West Africa. We try to test water that no one has tested. Us will face so many challenges in terms of regulations. Before we provide this, another one has come, and we are trying to make sure that we balance. This. Of course, we know the fact that it is very important for us to comply. Why that compliance is very important. We also need to know that it comes at a cost. But despite all these challenges, we continue to invest because we believe Nigerian shipping companies like ours have a critical role to play, strengthening national trade, like we are doing, connecting West Africa to North Africa. We are even expanding to the core that other line trade, to Somalia, to Lebanon. We go as far as Chad. and all these things is not easy just because of funding that involved. We believe if government can just find a way to harmonize all these regulations, to streamline it, to make it easier for people, for companies like us to access, to be able to access, in a very affordable way. We know that we can project the companies and the country's economy, to compete globally with our international shipping line that are ruling the face of our shipping line. We believe if the government can support us, if we can have access to affordable, funds, we'll be able to project to carry home our operations in a way that the country and the world at large we be benefited.
Thank you, Thank you so much, Mr. Kainde, for those practical insights into the operational and regulatory realities of running an indigenous container shipping line in Nigeria. From your contribution, you seem to have emphasized this issue about overlapping regulatory function, which has also been expressed by the other panelists. I am actually happy that we have one of the big regulators in the room today, which is NIMASA. I will get to Mr. Ani very shortly, who is the principal legal officer at NIMASA. But you've also, in addition to the issue of overlapping regulatory functions, you've also raised the issue of funding and funding constraints and infrastructure incentives from the government. Now, I will today. From your own perspective as the legal officer at NIMASA, how would you as maritime industry, and where do you see the greatest challenges for operators?
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much, Mr. Okun, for your question. I would say, and I will speak as a legal officer with the Nigeria Maritime Administration and Safety Agency. Compliance so far, the current state of compliance so far is fair, in the sense that most operators are cooperating with the regulatory agency to ensure that things go well. Like I always say, it is best to actually have your ship running than for you to continually spend on your ship not running. Because any ship that's not running is a liability. But when your ship is running, at least you're making some form of money. But generally, the level of compliance is fair. Take, for instance, the level of compliance with shipping registration. Reports from internal reports is that the level of compliance has gone up from about 50% from some years ago to about 60 to 65%. And I believe that the level of compliance will continue to grow because we are automating our processes, which should make it easier for operators to get straight through their registration or renewal processes without the needed, without the bureaucratic bottlenecks. So these are the areas where I feel that we are growing together, both the regulator and the operator. We are growing together in terms of compliance. So yes, the compliance level is improving, and we hope to see more improvements in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ani. It's actually interesting to know that there is a very reasonable level of compliance amongst the stakeholders, and I'm sure they'll be happy to have such a favorable review from NIMASA. So I think now the issue is how, for instance, your agency can make things easier for the stakeholders to ensure that business actually continues and that they are profiting from the business, because so far they seem to complain about a lot of regulatory hassles and even the high cost of compliance with some of the regulations that we have presently in our laws. But then I would like to have a legal perspective on the issues that we are discussing today. And in doing that, I would turn to our very own Mr. Nagozie Azi, who is a shipping lawyer that advises on a broad range of stakeholders across Nigeria's maritime industry. Mr. Azi, you have listened to the perspective shared by the stakeholders and regulators today. What do you consider to be the key legal and regulatory issues that businesses should prioritize if they are to remain compliant while also effectively competing in today's maritime industry?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Obong. From the way the conversation has gone so far this morning, I think one thing is very clear. Regulatory compliance isn't just a legal issue with legal consequences. From every my co-panelists that we have listened to this morning, and I believe most of us already know, it's a key commercial issue that businesses take into account, businesses in this sector, and not just with legal consequences, but with commercial consequences as well. So I would say that stakeholders should have at least a minimal understanding of the regulatory compliance they have to face on a regular basis, and have this proactive approach rather than a reactive approach towards the regulatory and legal compliance, so that it's not about remedying the situation, but being proactive to avoid it from the outset. And that means that whatever operational venture that you're going into from the outset, you need to keep it in mind that regulatory and legal compliance should shape that venture from the outset. And I would say that it's a lot of headache. Sometimes it looks like a maze that you have to navigate, but thankfully, you have your legal and other professional advisors to guide you through it. So I would say that you engage your advisors, your legal advisors from the outset. I mean, I've had a number of occasions where some businesses have ventured into these operations or ventures that is highly regulated, and then midway into it, you run into a roadblock, and then you now come and it's a question of remedying the situation, which, well, at the end of the day, yes, you would be able to do that, but the cost of having that reactive approach is way more, as against when from the outset you carry your legal advisors and other professional advisors along, and then manage compliance properly. In fact, the importance of regulatory and legal compliance, it's the fact that most businesses today have a dedicated desk for compliance shows you how important it has become as a business and commercial consideration. So, and then businesses should also keep in mind that this area, the law is unique, the law is dynamic, it continues to grow and develop. So you should have it in mind that each particular transaction should be shaped from the outset, not just relying on what had obtained previously, because overnight, a particular regulatory issue could would be modified or changed. So even when you are dealing with a subsequent venture that is very similar to one you have had in the past, it is still advisable that from the outset, you engage your legal advisors and other professional advisors to guide you along. So I will stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nagozie, for those practical recommendations you have made. I would have allowed you to go on a little longer, but we want to stay on schedule, and we have some additional follow-up questions to our panelists, and then we will see how we can wrap up this discussion very quickly. Now, I will turn to Mr. Eja. One of the concerns often raised by industry stakeholders is the issue of delays in administrative processes when dealing with regulators. I would like to ask, from your experience, how do these delays affect the ability of operators, including Petromarine and other indigenous ship owners, to compete effectively?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Administrative delays have very direct commercial impact, and I know it was when I listened to Mr. Nee, where he had said that one of their objectives is to ensure that they facilitate we ship owners and operators to get the right certifications, documentation, so that our assets will be operational. Shipping is a very time-sensitive business. A vessel earns revenue. Okay, I speak from my day-to-day business. A vessel only earns revenue when she is operational. So if you have delays in obtaining permits, approvals, renewals, or inspections, it just keeps the vessel idle. Of course, once the vessel is idle, revenue is not coming in. Of course, depending on how that vessel is bettered, wherever she is bettered, or alongside the quay, you're incurring cost, even if she's not any revenue, because the ex of that vessel will still be running. You still have your full complement of the crew aboard the vessel. You still have all the other things in terms of food and likes of it. You still have to incur that cost. So these delays have that direct commercial impact on we ship owners. And I know that in our respective discussions,
thank you, Mr. Eja. I'm sorry to jump in. We just want to share on schedule so we can also listen to our other panelists today. I have a question for Mr. Annie, because a lot of issues have been raised. I think I've also seen a question in the chat box, and that our audience are really eager to raise specific issues relating to their activities. Mr. Annie, effective compliance often depends on constructive engagement between regulators and industry stakeholders. Now, in your view, what more can both NIMASA and industry stakeholders do to strengthen collaboration and improve compliance outcomes?
Thank you so much again, Mr. Okun. And that's a very lovely question. I see what operators go through almost every day in the course of my work here. And I understand where Mr. Eja is coming from, as well as other industry operators. Now, I'm going to use one word here. And this word is a word that has traversed through the entire maritime industry globally. The word trust. There's a serious lack of trust between the operators and the regulators. And like I like to say, in this maritime industry, there are different divisions. There's a criminal division, there's an administrative division, and there's a commercial division. Now, there's a serious disconnect between the commercial division and the administrative division. And that disconnect spans out of a lack of trust. Now, in the maritime industry, we all know this, that the motto is our word is our bond. It is a motto that most maritime operators know. But we find out that in this our industry, especially here in Nigeria, there are times where some people, or should I say some operators, may want to cut corners, especially when it comes to causes of delays in processing documentation. You might find out that in the course of processing an application or documentation, you find out that some documents are incomplete. Now, most causes of delay is as a result of the fact that either the documentation is not complete or there's a need for clarification of certain issues and all that. And I understand that, yes, there's a bureaucratic process because I'm a principal officer. Once I finish dealing with a document, I have to put it through to my superior, who puts it through their superior until it gets through the chain. Now, like I said earlier, we're working on the simplification of this process by the automation of processes, whereby it's end-to-end without the necessary thing. Everybody that needs to have an input in that thing would have made that input, and it goes from end to end. But it's a work in progress. But with what we have now, we have to ensure that every single process is followed. That is the reason why sometimes for some operators, we find out that there's a delay in this thing. Now, going back to the trust issue I was saying, now there's a serious disconnect between the commercial aspect of the maritime industry and the administrative. Administrative, they're thinking of implementing policies and laws made from the legislature, because everything, the MASA as a body will only operate within the ambit of the established legislative instruments. That's in the MASA Act, the Merchant Shipping Act, the Cabotage Act, and to an extent, the Suppression of Piracy and Other Maritime Offences Act. Now, this is where we are limited to. We cannot go beyond that because we'll be overreaching. So if we are to provide our regulatory services to stakeholders, it is always within that limit. Now, if there was a synergy, like Mr. Edger said earlier on in this webinar, which I also support, there's supposed to be a synergy between the commercial aspect, that's the maritime operators, and the administrators, because the administrator sees things in one direction. How are we going to administer this? How are we going to do this? And in Nigeria, I see that there's an onus to actually look into revenue, which I do personally. My personal opinion is that I don't believe that we should be looking at revenue. We should be looking at developing the industry generally, creating a level playing field for all operators to operate in and get the best out of the industry. Revenue, I believe, is for the revenue service, but we are stuck with what we are because of the ambit of the legislation that we are in. But if we have this trust and collaboration between the operators and the administration, then at policy level, before even legislative level, all these issues will be sorted out. Now, earlier on, we've listened to the operator saying something about overlapping regulations. Now, this happens as a result of what I'm saying, this disconnect. If everything was connected, the commercial and the administrative are connected, and they are sharing the same thing, because the commercial will think of where the money turns. Administration thinks of how to make the field level for everybody to make that money. It is not in our own interest as administrators to see the operators suffer, to see the operator making losses. It is to our benefit. I mean, we'll call ourselves good administrators when we see that there's a flourish, there's a cluster of industry operators out there that are making this money, that are turning out this, and it is well represented in the revenue generated through taxes and other this thing. So my take on this, yeah, I'll just end it here. My take on this is that there should be a connect between the commercial and the administrative for us to get the best result both regulatory and otherwise. Thank you.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Nick. Quite an excellent point. You've said it all. The focus of the regulator should be about building the industry, not so much about the revenue. And I also like the other point you made about automation, which can significantly improve compliance outcomes. But let me now move on to Mr. Kane there. Uh, just a moment, please. Now, Mr. Kane, that you raised a lot of issues, a lot of concerns, and also spoke about some of the constraints you're facing as an indigenous shipping line. Now, I want to ask you, what changes could be made to make it easier for Nigerian shipping companies to expand their fleet and compete more effectively within regional and international trade sphere? Hello, Mr. Kane. Are you still on the call? Okay. Mr. Kende, can you hear me? Oh, his network seems to be freezing. Okay, let me turn to Mr. Shashagbong very quickly. We all know that offshore projects often require companies to consider cabotage compliance of vessels engaged on projects. Now, local content obligations, early engagement with regulators, contractual risk allocations, and project timelines. Mr. Shashagbong, from your experience, how do these considerations influence the way offshore projects are planned, negotiated, and executed, particularly where multiple regulators and contractors are involved? I don't know if you can just share your insight within 1 minute.
Yes, this one's actually relatively easy. The oil and gas side, we're the customers. And the cost of compliance is sadly on Mr. Edger and the ship owners. It's not something that we worry about. As a result, we simply, in our tendering processes, and ask that any ship owners that want to provide services to us are compliant with the Cabotage Act and the relevant of the regulations and have all the relevant licenses. We tend not to get behind how far that regulation is. We do, as Mr. Edger would also note, we do have some flexibility around if people are waiting for licenses to come out or waiting for permits to come out. We can still work with them in a preparatory manner, but we have a zero tolerance for vessels that aren't in full compliance. Simple as that. We pay 80% in dollars, so we get to set out what we want, and it is to have a fully compliant vessel. So the short answer to your question, we don't spend much time thinking about it. We only talk with ship owners who are in compliance. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Shashagbong, for those insights you've shared. I see that Mr. Kane is back on the call. Please, can you confirm if you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. My question was, in view of the many constraints that you highlighted earlier, I wanted to know, what do you think would make it easier for Nigerian shipping companies to expand their fleet and compete more effectively within in the regional and international trade space?
Yeah, to enable Nigerian shipping companies like ours, the indigenous shipping line like us, to increase their fleet and compete effectively, with international carrier. First thing that must be done, there should be easier access, to affordable long-term financing, specifically designed, for indigenous companies like us. Second, continued investments in modern infrastructure, like we are trying to. We've been talking about since the in processes that we have to undergo before we could apply, we could obtain one certificate or the other. So if we can just bring all this, in a digital to digitalize them, it will reduce cargo dwell time and improve vessel turnaround time. Which will in a way cost. I think the top point I'll be mentioning is regulatory processes should be simplified through coordination among government agencies and creating a genuine single window. For the new introduction of single window that's currently going on, I think it will in a way help us to fast track, the process of clearance, of cargoes in Nigeria. So it is also important for us to prioritize Nigerian operators in government-backed cargo. In other lines like China, government provide all these finances at a single digit or at times no interest rate. If the indigenous shipping company like us can have access to all these finances, it will go a long way, to help us, increase our fleet, and increase our operations. Vessel operation capital intensive, and we just have to get that fund. If not, we'll just be running, behind our foreign competitors. So finally, in the maritime education and civil development, in terms of capital building and modern technology, we also strengthen the industry capacity to compete internationally.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kane. I agree with you that continued investment in infrastructure will significantly improve the work that Clarion Shipping is doing, and more government intervention, maybe more incentives, will also be very helpful. And I'm very happy that Mr. Ani is here, and will take this message back to the authorities, and hopefully government will be more responsive to the concerns that have been expressed today in this discussion. But I would like now to turn to Mr. Azi. Mr. Azi, earlier on you talked about steps that businesses can, talked about being proactive as one of the key steps to effective compliance. Now, I want to ask, what other practical steps do you think that business can manage compliance risk proactively rather than responding only to regulatory issues as they arise? I know that sometimes, the culture is for people to wait until, the problems come. But can you give practical steps that businesses can use to manage compliance proactively instead of being reactive to issues as they arise?
Oh, thank you, Mr. I think this flows directly from the earlier question and the response I had already given. So, as I mentioned earlier, businesses are becoming more and more aware of the critical nature of regulatory compliance. You see it in the fact that most stakeholders in this industry have a dedicated compliance desk. So I will still go back to what I had said earlier on, but perhaps highlight it a bit more, which is involve your legal advisors from the outset and not wait until the problem arises. So have a comprehensive overview of the particular venture you are going into, and know what is expected. And of course, it becomes easier with your professional advisors from the outset. And as I already said, each business venture is unique. So even if it's a business or a venture you engage in quite frequently, and you've had similar ones in the past, So you already said law is dynamic, it continues to grow. Each particular venture is dynamic. So involve your legal advisors from the outset um, and maintain good relationship. Yes, I'm also glad it's been mentioned and highlighted by previous speakers of the need to have um, this synergy from on the part of the regulators and other stakeholders in the industry. I think relationships is a very good thing. When you have good relationships and then carry or rather involve your legal advisors from the beginning, you find out that you would avoid these potential pitfalls and you would be able to have this, if that's just the proactive approach rather than a reactionary approach. Sometimes you cannot entirely avoid them running into one problem or the other, but you find out that risks become significantly minimized when you take these proactive steps from the outset, and whatever you run into along the line, you find out that they are more easier to manage as against when you have failed in some fundamental regulatory issues and then run into problem and now start trying to solve them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Azi. As we begin to wrap up the discussion today, I believe that these practical insights and recommendations you've provided provides an excellent way for us to conclude our panel discussion today. You have reminded us that effective compliance is ultimately about anticipating risk and making informed decisions, and also embedding compliance into the day-to-day business operations. Now, before we move to the audience Q&A, I can see there are a lot of questions and comments coming in on the chat box. I must say that this has been an incredibly exciting session, and there are a lot of key takeaways. But I think the key ones for me are this. First, effective compliance is not simply about meeting regulatory requirements, but it's a framework that enables businesses to operate efficiently and compete effectively. Secondly, regulatory certainty, consistency, and practical engagement between regulators and industry stakeholders remain critical to building confidence in the industry. And finally, one of the takeaways for me is that Nigeria's maritime competitiveness will depend on finding the right balance between achieving local regulatory objectives and creating an environment where operators can thrive in the global marketplace. Now, I would still provide some time for our panelists to share their final thoughts. But as we conclude, we would like to capture the views of our audience on where the industry should focus its efforts going forward. So please, I request that you take a few minutes of your time to answer the last set of polls that we have prepared. You should have the polls on your screen now. Okay. Which area should be prioritized to improve Nigeria's maritime competitiveness? Please kindly cast your votes and let's see the areas you think should be prioritized to improve Nigeria's maritime competitiveness. All right, I see the majority of our audience chose the first option, simplifying regulatory processes and approvals. And the next is improving coordination among maritime regulators. I actually believe that this has featured very prominently in the discussions we've had, the need for greater coordination among the regulators and simplifying the processes for compliance. Thank you very much for your participation in the poll. Now, with that said, I would like to open the floor to our panelists to share their final thoughts on the issue we are discussing today. I would like to begin with Mr. Eja. Mr. Eja, do you have any final reflections before we move to the questions from our audience?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr.
IT, please, you
Moderator.
can take the poll off the screen now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kwon. And I believe I'll just close with one of the remarks. I think it was from Dan or Mr. Nee, all right? The success of the maritime industry, like I've often said, depends on partnership between regulators and industry. And I think from the respective submissions and contributions that we've had from the other panelists, the one key thing that stems out or stands out is on the need for us to collaborate. When we have clear regulations, we have regulations that are predictable, like I said earlier on in my opening statement, and of course, when we have efficiency that is being administered, businesses will invest, and of course, the confidence will be there. We also would grow indigenous capacity, and of course, the broader industry and Nigeria becomes more competitive in the global maritime space. So collaboration is a watchword, and I would encourage, and I'm happy that NIMASA is here. I never stop engaging, even at the level of with the DG, with the NPM, the NTDMB, ES. So, and oftentimes I'm always emphasizing on the word, let's collaborate, and we're not fighting each other. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much, Mr. Eja. It's actually good to know that we are not fighting anybody, or there's no fight, but we are stakeholders working towards the growth and the prosperity of the maritime industry. Now I'll call on Mr. Shashegbong to share his final reflections on the topic today.
Yeah, thank you very
Hello,
much.
Mr. Shashegbong.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, it was good to hear the debate between the panelists. I'm sure the Q&As will be useful. It was good also to hear the quite enlightening views of Mr. Annie from NIMASA. I hope his personal opinions will also be one that guides the agency. As I mentioned before, we have multiple regulators in the oil and gas sector. We hope that the maritime sector will be driven well by NIMASA with a mixture of understanding of revenue and regulation. And I was happy the way he set out the functions. And to make sure that the industry is fit for purpose and can grow, and can also become a partner for the oil and gas moving forward. Those are key things, and these kinds of discussions ensure that regulations have a policy arc and actually deliver value, and we hope that continues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shashegbong. Now, Mr. Kane, did you have any final reflections?
Yes, I think I'll have to go the line of Mr. Sonny. The future of Nigerian maritime industry, lies in strong collaboration. Without it, we can't go, Jesus Christ.
Hello, Mr. Kende. It seems we've lost Mr. Kende. All right, without wasting time, I'm sure he will join us back. I will turn to Mr. Ani for his final reflections, if any.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Okon, Mr. Eja, Mr. Shashegbon, and Mr. Kunle. I mean, listening to everything today, especially as an administrator, we, on behalf of my agency, we take everything you said on board. We can only improve, and I will try my best as an industry person that is with the agency to make sure that these my opinions and ideas, permeate so that we can all benefit from this industry. My reflections on all this is that, like Mr. Eja said, a thorough collaboration is needed. We need to understand where money turns, because if you're looking for revenue and the other person is looking for how to get revenue from the other person, there can be a disconnect. So the person looking for revenue has to understand how this person is making his revenue, so that he makes things easy for that person to make that revenue, so that they can generate their own revenue. So when there's this handshake, as Mr. Eja said earlier, and there's an understanding, then there's everything put in place to ensure that things work well, to the mutual benefit of both operator and regulator. So in my closing remark, if I may say, it would be good to have understanding of how the commercials work from the administrator's point of view, and from the operator's point of view, how administration works. Because when that understanding is there, then there will be no issue as to um, uh, delays, or the inefficiencies that is being experienced. So we can only improve from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Ani. Now, on behalf of Dentons ACAS-Law, I would like to thank all our distinguished panelists for sharing such an incredibly rich insight and perspective throughout today's discussion. What I can see from all that has been said is that collaboration is the key to effective compliance in Nigeria's maritime industry. And also, it's also important for stakeholders and the regulators to see themselves as partners in progress. Thank you very much for such a wonderful and insightful contributions that you have brought to bear in the conversation today. We will now move to the audience Q&A session, which we have received a number of questions throughout the chat during the discussion, and we will take additional questions at this stage. But if you have not yet submitted any question, please feel free to do so using the Q&A chat box, and we will address as many questions as time permits. But I will begin with the questions we already have received. Just a moment, please. Sorry, just a moment. I'm trying to pull up the questions. Now, there is something here from Solomon Ogudo. It says, having identified these challenges, how do we approach or confront these challenges or propose solutions, either as an organization or a body of association, since there is no consensus on this? Sorry, that question has disappeared. Mm. All right, let me move quickly to this question from Richard Okuna. It says, from a banking and finance perspective, how does NIMASA's registration and compliance requirements affect the perfection of ship mortgages as security? Specifically, does non-compliance with cabotage or registration rules create enforcement risk for lenders if they ever need to arrest or sell a vessel to recover on a defaulted loan? Mr. Ani, I believe this question, I don't know if this is an issue you can address here.
Okay, saying the master's registration and compliance requirement affects perfection of ship mortgages as security. Well, registration and compliance requirement will will obviously affect perfection of ship mortgages, because if okay, is everybody hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, if your vessel is not registered, and it's not compliant with the extent provisions, then how can you mortgage it? Because the vessel has to be in existence in the registry for you to actually go and obtain the forms for the registration of mortgages. The vessel needs to have complied with a whole lot of provisions for it to be eligible, for it to be mortgaged. So if it's not compliant, then you don't have a vessel that you want to mortgage. So the mortgage has its own specifics. You have to go to CAC, put a charge on it. Then you have to come down to NIMASA, get the forms, and the charge and everything. Register the preference. Register who is the mortgagor and the mortgagee, and all those bits and bobs. All those form part of compliance. If you are not complying with the provisions for mortgages, then you're going to have a messed up transaction. So at the end of the day, you want to comply with what the law says or what the regulation says pertaining to mortgaging your ship. You have to provide all the documentation of the ships for the mortgage to be carried out. And if you're not compliant, how are you going to tender those documentations? So yes, it goes a long way in determining a whole lot of issues, a whole lot of risks. But at the end of the day, you need to comply with what the regulation or what the law says that you should comply with for you to have an effective mortgage in place. So the answer to that question is yes. Registration and compliance requirements can affect the perfection of ship mortgages.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ani, for your response. And I believe that the participants has been able to get meaningful clarifications on the question raised. But there seems to be another question here for you. This one is coming from Dan Whiskey. It says, with the issues raised by Mr. Kende, what is or will NIMASA do to assist businesses obtain loans and make the business environment more friendly?
Sorry,
Okay. Yes.
sorry, Tony, for butting in.
Yeah.
This question from Solomon Ogudo that you said disappeared from your system. So sorry for taking us back. I still have it, and I believe it might be good for the panelists to be given a chance to answer it. And especially since we have the president of SOAN here, is talking about what the association can do. So I don't know,
Yes.
would you
I
like
was
me to
about to
read
get
it
to
out
that
for you?
shortly. Yes, I have it now. I was
You
able
have
to
it
get to
now.
it. Yes, I
Oh,
have it
okay.
now.
Okay, then. Thank you.
Yes.
Just making sure you still have it so that we will not miss it.
Yes, I have
Thank
it.
you.
I have it now. We will get to that immediately after this question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I
Thank
said
you. Thank you very much.
thank you to Mr. Dan Whiskey. what NIMAS can do to assist businesses to obtain loans and make business environment more friendly. Okay, Mr. Danwiski, in January, the agency launched the CVFF portal. CVFF, as you know, is the Cabotage Vessel Finance Fund, which is meant for the increment of tonnage within Nigeria, and also to assist maritime businesses. So yes, that is in place already, and it's statutory. It's available through the application is available through the CBFF portal. Someone also asked a question akin to what you've asked, though more detail, about the disbursement of the CBFF. Yes, the disbursement of the CBFF is already in play, in the sense that we have the portal, the funds are available through the primary lending institutions, and according to the new way of assessing it, the banks bear all the risk. So the primary lending institutions are the ones that will determine, the criteria. NIMASA contributes 50% to the fund. The primary lending institution takes 35%, and 50% is to be forwarded as equity by whoever is going in for the loan. So I think that is I think that should answer the question on what are we doing to assist businesses. Other than that, we're trying our possible best to ensure that the process for running a maritime business is clear and is free of bottlenecks through the automation I spoke about earlier. We're in the process of automating most of our processes, and in good time, hopefully the national single window will be fully operational, whereby everything will be done in one window for all your maritime business needs. So I think the agency is doing enough. I believe the federal government will also be doing what it can to assist in any way it can to assist businesses, have loans to do their businesses. So like I always say, it's a work in progress. As more engagements occur, I'm very sure more solutions will be found. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ani. I believe that you have squarely addressed Mr. Danwiski's question. Thank you very much for that. Now let's jump to this question from Richard Okuna. It says, from a banking and finance perspective, how does NIMASA's sorry. Right, that's the question. That's the question, right? Hmm? Yes, yes. This question is from Solomon Ogudu. It says, having identified these challenges, how do we approach? Sorry, is this a question that Ms. Uba just pointed out?
I should think so. Solomon Ogudu.
Yes, Solomon Ogudu, yes. Having identified these challenges, how do we approach or confront these challenges to profess solution, either as an organization or a body of association, since there is a consensus on this, and also acknowledging the multiplier effect on operation, cost, and overall the competitiveness of industry players or as an investor? So I believe Mr. Aja would be in a good position to address this. Over to you, Mr. Aja.
Okay, I mean, I'll just start off from where I left it in my closing remarks. Stronger collaboration between regulators and operators. The other point has to do with some of these government agencies and regulators to fully automate their systems. There are some government regulators in this country, in the industry, that have fully moved on to, they are fully digitalized right now. I mean, my folks in the office sit the comfort of their office and their desk, and then they run all the applications, send in all the applications, fill all the necessary forms that needs to be filled, and send it to this agency. And at the click of the button, it's gone. And within weeks, within the stipulated time, we have our certifications, we have our certificates. So I believe that for some of the government agencies that are yet to move on to full automation, there has to be that upgrade, if I would call it that way. Once this is done, then you have an expedited process in terms of having to apply for your certifications and approvals, and you get it at the speed of light. The other thing also is that, I mean, just to touch on what Mr. Ani said, I mean, he's very spot on in terms of, because oftentimes I need to be very balanced here, very balanced here. And I tell my members as well, also, even in my organization, that you cannot be seen to be doing the wrong thing, and then you want government to come to your aid. First and foremost, you have to comply. And once you comply, do your bit first, and then the government or the regulators will do their part as well also. So in terms of having to have your vessel properly registered with all the relevant government agencies, it's very, very key. All right. So you can't expect to register a mortgage when you don't have a vessel that is registered and all that. That's a recipe for failure from day one and all that. But the other thing that Point touched on was the fact that, and we've had these conversations at different fora, is the fact that if they go ahead to arrest the vessel, there's an opportunity for people to come together to still have that vessel trade. How they're going to work this out is the conversations and discussions we keep having and all that. Because at the end of the day, you arrest the vessel with maybe a cargo or something, or maybe the product on that vessel, and the vessel just rots away. You know, they end up in court for as long as 5, 6, 7 years and all that. The asset is just there wasting. So I think the MASA and the courts as well also, these are the areas they need to look into to see how, even if there is a litigation in place, maybe the bank has, arrested or maybe gotten an injunction to arrest this vessel, how can that vessel still be trading to earn revenue? Because at the end of the day, you end up in court, endless litigation, the vessel is rotting away, revenue is not being earned, and it's just an unfortunate situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eja. I totally agree that such occurrences is really, really unfortunate. And we've seen experiences like that in practice. I can see a hand raised. But before I go to that, Mr. Eja, there's still a question here for you from Emmanuel Ikwakolam. It says many businesses view compliance primarily as a regulatory obligation or a form of legal burden. He said, from your experience, have you found that strong compliance can also create commercial or operational advantages? And do you have any specific instances where being compliant created an advantage for your business?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you to Emmanuel. I believe that one of the biggest misconception, all right, is that compliance is simply a cost or a legal obligation. No, it's not. All right. In reality, compliance is a business enabler. All right. And I just, based on my last comment, all right, you have to comply. All right. It's for your own good. It's for the good of your business. It's for the success of your organization. You cannot be seen to be on the wrong side of the law and then you expect to thrive in business. So that is point one. And at Petromarine, we have this full commitment to compliance. In fact, it's a KPI issue for either my HSC manager or any of my managers for me to note that one of our certificates has expired. In fact, we have a portal that triggers, gets us reminders maybe 3 months to the expiration of those certificates, just to keep us abreast of what we need to do and all that. I mean, we have to comply to HSE standards. We have to comply even with Nigerian content that I've talked about initially and all that. Even with NIMASA as well. Also, all the regulators, all the regulatory standards that are expected of us, we comply with them as a company. And this has positioned us as a trusted partner to the companies that we do business with today in Nigeria. Of course, you know that Emmanuel is asking for some examples and all that. I mean, we participate in tenders every now and then. And during pre-qualification, right, in the tendering cycle, if you're seen to have gotten a robust compliance record, strong safety performance, some of those things come to your advantage and come to your, in terms of pre-qualifying you from the technical phase to the commercial phase. And of course, we are very, very transparent with government. I was sharing a thought yesterday, and I said that there was a time that we had this investigation. FIRS wrote to us and said they were coming for investigation, and then they had threatened, to come in with mobile policemen and EFCC and all that. And we wrote back to them to say, you don't need to come to my premises with mobile policemen. We are fully committed to the investigation. We will give you all forms of data and records that you want. And let's have the investigation, all right? It's not cast on stone that after your investigation, you send me a report, I would accept that report if I don't agree with it. And we had the investigation because we knew that we had no skeletons in our cupboards. We had complied with everything that we needed to comply with in terms of our tax requirements and tax regulations as well also. We had the exercise. And they sent the report, we pushed back on the report and said we don't agree with that report. And at the end of the day, of course, I'm not saying we won, but at the end of the day, they had to look at it from our perspective. And then we had a very, very conclusive and good conclusion to that investigation. So it's in the overall interest of member companies and businesses, to comply with regulation and all that. So my message is very clear. Don't view compliance as a regulatory burden. It's not. View it as an investment in the credibility of your business, in the professional excellence of your business, and of course, overall, it will sustain your growth as a business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aja. I really liked what you said, your response that compliance is the enabler of the business. I think that's a key take home and is for the success of the business. But there seem to be some more questions here for Mr. Ani from the regulatory side. I can see a question from Peace Olopade. It says, having identified overlapping regulatory functions, what steps are being taken to address this, and how can industry players safely navigate overlapping requirements across different regulators? I recalled earlier on, Mr. Ani talked about the national single window, but I don't know if he has some more points to add to that. Hello, Mr. Ani, are you still on the call?
Sorry, I had my mic on mute. Sorry.
Right.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Okon, and thank you to Peace Olopade for your question. The question is quite interesting. I did mention earlier in my discussion that we as regulators are only creatures of our enabling legislation, and we do not have power over the National Assembly, who creates other laws for other as enabling legislation for other regulatory bodies to say, hey, stop. We are already having this function, because when it's passed into law, it's already passed into law. So we have no control over that. But what we do have control over is what is within our purview. And if there's a requirement for for compliance within our purview, then it is a requirement for compliance. We cannot change that. But like I said earlier on, where there is a handshake, I borrow Mr. Eja's words, between the operators and the regulators at policy level, which will give rise to legislation, that's where most of these issues can be resolved. Because if we know that, oh, this particular agency already has this certain function, we will not go ahead as a legislative body to make laws for another body that will have the same functions. You know, someone can easily point it out to them and say, hey, hold on, we have this function in this act. We can put that same function in that act. It is taken care of at policy level where all these things are considered. So overlapping regulatory functions, unfortunately, it is one of the thorns in the flesh that is there. Hopefully through legislative review of the said act, things can be taken care of, but it needs a serious handshake and pressure from operators on that issue at policy level. So in terms of us navigating the overlap requirement, I'm sorry to say, if it is with a different regulatory body and it's a requirement, it might need to be complied with. But if there's a complaint, of course, it should be taken to the National Assembly where all these laws are made. So that is where I think I'll end it at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ani. I would like to go to Mr. Azi. He had earlier raised his hands. I don't know if he has further comments to make. Mr. Azi, over to you.
Oh, no. Nothing really. As an Admiralty practitioner, I just became a bit intrigued when Mr. Edge made a comment with respect to a vessel under arrest for an elongated period, if something could be done to allow the vessel to carry on its business. Well, yes, indeed, there are quite a number of flaws in our system, the judicial system that needs to be addressed for a quicker administration of justice, especially as it pertains to Admiralty jurisdiction, which we all know is very, very time sensitive. But just to just by a little comment about that, the essence of arresting a ship in the first instance is to obtain security to secure the claim. So the remedy is always there. It provides some sort of a guarantee or any other acceptable security. It could be from a P&I club insurer, the insurer of the vessel, and the vessel would be let go to continue its trade, because everybody knows that you can't keep a vessel. The essence is to get it temporarily, to get the owner to provide some sort of security, which is in the custody of the court while the vessel goes pending determination of the claim, whether there's merit in it or not. So, like I said, I just got it treated as an Admiralty jurisdiction practitioner, and just thought to say something about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Azi, for your intervention. Thank you very much. Now, I believe we have come full circle. Unfortunately, we've not been able to address all the questions that was sent to us, but I want to take the time out to thank all our participants for the thoughtful questions and engagement. We will, for additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. At this point, I will now hand over to our partner for her closing remarks. Ms. Uba, I think you are muted. Oh, we cannot hear you.
Happened again, yes.
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. So I said, Thank you to all our panelists. I hope everybody will agree with me that the panelists did justice to this topic. I enjoyed listening to everybody, and from the discussions from everybody, the operators, and even the attendees, some of the main issues are the overlapping functions by multiple agencies. Then the issue of funding mentioned especially by Clarion. And was the third one that I have here. Yes, just the two of them seem to be the main issues raised here. Then I was very happy when it was NIMASA that mentioned the revenue facing implementation of the laws, because this has actually been a pet peeve of mine, especially with respect to the Cabotage Act. Yes, NIMASA has said that they didn't make the law, they only implement the law the way it was made. Those acts were not made like revenue generation policies, but unfortunately, presently, they are being implemented like revenue generating policies. And because of that, operators are suffering. The infrastructure that Mr. Kehinde spoke about, if acts were being implemented the way they are supposed to be, which is achievement of the objectives, the goals of that act. Tony, you will agree with me that by now we'll have infrastructures in place for complete and more efficient implementation of at least the Cabotage Act, which we don't have now, 22 years after. And that is because that particular statute has been implemented, has been administered like a revenue generation policy. And when you really look at it, you will find out that many of the problems we've discussed here today are actually also coming from this, because most of the agencies now seem to be in competition with each other on who's going to bring in more money, and no longer achieving the objective of the act. So if we can do something about this, I think it will help, it will help with many of the issues that we have discussed here today. And then if we can also look at encouraging more ventures like Clarion Shipping for more Nigerian ship owners to venture outside Nigeria into international trade. I get it. We have to build our house first before we start going outside. So when Cabotage stands solidly, the ship owners will have more structures behind them to venture also outside. And when that happens, that also helps our seafarers. Our cadets, for example, when you want to put them on vessel for sea time, you don't put them on cabotage vessel. You put them on real seagoing vessels. And that is what ventures like Clarion Shipping will do for us. They are international carriers. They really go to sea, and hopefully, eventually, they will go to further more than Mr. Kehinde has told us today. But on the whole, wonderful session. And I am so grateful to all, to all our speakers for sharing their knowledge and experience with us today. We are very grateful that you agreed to participate with this and how much you have enriched this webinar. We are also very grateful to all our participants who made out time to be with us for how long now? Goodness me. This is 2 hours. We are so grateful that you all stayed here and made out this time to stay here. And I hope everybody gained something from this session. We thank you very much on behalf of the firm. I thank you all for joining us and hope you answer us again when we call, because we intend to keep this sort of conversations going to bring it to the notice of everybody, the regulators, and the industry, the issues we have, and hopefully we'll be able to build better industries for all of us. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Chisa. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chisa. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, our wonderful attendees.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Eja,
Yeah,
Mr.
thank you.
Kunle, and
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
Sir
you,
Henry.
everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you for coming. Thank you.
Bye.
Welcome.